All right, we are recording. We're live. Episode 2.
Got a name for the podcast yet?
Nope, not yet. Just sticking with MX Bikes Podcast for now. But
Alright. Yeah,
RedRider197, or Red is short. I appreciate you for coming on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So,
Yeah.
we'll start out. Tell us about your kind of upbringing, but more so like in the line of like dirt bikes. Like, how'd you get into dirt bikes starting out growing up?
Yeah. Dad raced dirt bikes. And then when I think I was 3, it's kind of similar to like Jesse's story in a way with like learning how to ride a bicycle by like the age of 3, and then riding a PWF 50 or something like that. And I had raced up until I was about 7, and then I stopped. Just wasn't fun. Moto Dad was super hard.
Yeah.
And some other issues, but and then when I was around 12, we got back into it and started back on CR80. And previously, before that, I stopped right at the KTM 50. So just before you learn how to use a clutch, and so that my first introduction into what it's like to do a clutch and all of that. I soon outgrew that 85, hitting that growth spurt around 13, 14 years old. And from about 12 till I want to say 20, I was like actively racing. But
Oh, cool.
yeah, just injuries towards the end. They're having to get a job and or go to college and or figure out something that will pay the bills.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. So were you like trying to do the whole like AMA side of things for racing, or was it more just like local stuff?
More so local stuff. I did try to qualify for Loretta's, but I did not. The uh, the regional qualifier, I believe, is the one I didn't do good at. Like I guess whichever it is in the sequence, like the second one,
Yeah.
maybe area qualifiers and then regionals. Yeah, I didn't do very well at regionals. Bad starts equal
Yeah.
not good times. Yeah.
What classes did you try to qualify for?
I tried to get in both 125 and 250C class.
Okay, so it was more
Yeah.
so on big bikes that you're taking it more seriously.
Yeah. And then once I didn't make that, then I moved up to just, local B class, and then just did well, we have District 11 here in Ohio. I think there's 11 and 12 here, but we mostly did like Southern Ohio racing,
Okay.
and got for what it's worth, you get like your your B class championship, but what it amounts to, really, like in retrospect, is just like showing up to the races.
Yeah.
Not that I wasn't, that I didn't win or anything, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, really, when you think of like a real life aspect side of it, instead of going to the, pro racing, really any type of amateur racing, it's pretty much for living in the moment, for fun. when it all boils down to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
if you do make it pro, which, I mean, even when you're pro, I mean, all of them look back and say, like, well, we took it a little too seriously. We probably should have just had fun. Like, I know Adam Cinceril, who just made a post a couple days ago, pretty much saying that exact same thing. And if there's one previous amateur to say it, I'd say it'd probably be him. 'Cause,
Yeah.
I mean, he's a great racer and all, but I think his peak was definitely in the amateur ranks.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't like I don't think I ever really thought while I was racing that like I'd ever be like pro level. Um
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just some of it's like having the mental side of it, or just like uh, I think because I stopped and then got back into it, the kids that I was racing were just so much faster, and like I see an A rider or a pro, and I'm like, oh man, I can never even keep up with them, or something like that. And I feel like if you are meant, to be a pro rider, like you probably don't think those types of things. It's just like, yeah, I want to, race with them. I'm like, I can't.
Yeah, the
So I don't know.
separation between classes is insane. Like maybe not so much for super local stuff, because I mean, a lot of the times, depending on how small of a race it is, C class is kind of sometimes the fastest class on the track, which is so backwards. But for races that don't really have, I don't know what the word would be, but if there's no one looking for sandbaggers and actively kicking them out of the class, C class is just full of A and B riders, which is weird because other than a trophy, I mean, you don't get money from C class, you don't get pro points from C class.
Yeah.
But like once you get to the national side, which I mean, even still, Loretta's C class could whoop most local A races, but
Yeah.
talking more so on the lines of like B, A, and then pro. I mean, when you see like a local pro come to a local track, like for me, I've got a few guys at my local track that have their pro license and try to qualify for maybe some nationals or a supercross, and they like on the pro track they look like they're just learning how to ride a bike. But then you come back to the local track and they look like Ken Roxon or Eli Tomac. It's insane the separation there is.
Yeah, it is. Here in Ohio, we had, I don't know if any of the names you've heard of, maybe from like Arena Cross, because he did do well, but Zach Ames was a pretty good amateur, going up, but didn't really make anything like pro. He also had there's a kid named Sean Rife, I think like Hondo had picked him up like as an amateur, but ended up not doing anything. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I haven't heard of those guys. But yeah,
I'm trying to think of,
that really tends to be
even when I saw.
Sorry, what was that? You go.
It's like even when I saw like Tyler Bowers and I'm blanking on his name. I know I hated being called it. His nickname was Snack Pack. But just seeing those two pro riders, race at a local racing, go back and forth, and like where they do like during an AMA event. It's just wild.
Oh yeah.
Like you would think they would be out in front, but they're, right there mid-pack with everybody else.
Yeah, yeah, and down here in Central Florida, we've got a pretty good amount of pro riders that live down here, and retired pro riders as well. And yeah, just the other day, over at Dade City, Chad Reed, who's the other guy? I'm thinking of the guy that was on the Yamaha 250 this year at Supercross that had everyone revving his bike for $20. I can't remember his name, but I'm sure I'll think of it here in a second. But both of them were out at Dade City racing this past weekend, and Chad Reed ended up getting second overall with third and first in the two motos. And the other guy, who I can't think of his name right now, he ended up getting third with, I want to say, second and third. And the guy who came in first, I've never heard of him before. He's just some local dude that showed up, raced the pro money class, and I want to say he got first and second. And to beat Chad Reed and then another pro dude that makes, maybe half of the mains, I mean, that's a serious, like, group to beat.
That's pretty wild. Yeah.
I mean, you definitely don't see that every day. But yeah, I mean, let's get into the meat and potatoes, if you will. So getting into video game side of things, you've definitely gotten your big start from Reflex before you moved over to bikes. You want to talk a little on that?
Maybe just like a brief kind of summary. I think it was sometime in 2015 when I had bought my pre-built PC and was, able to make some tracks. I probably spent like several hours just like kind of working out like how to do stuff in Photoshop, and there was some tutorials, but like those videos, because I've looked back now, they've been deleted by the uploader for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
I think even one of them was Logan's.
Oh, really? I didn't know he got his start in Reflex.
Yeah, it was he either started there, or I'm not sure how much he did for Sim, but yeah, he did make some Reflex tracks, and he did some tutorials. I just think he's either privated them or deleted them because he thought they weren't good.
Yeah.
As he does with most things.
Oh yeah. I mean, he's got some banger tracks that, like for bikes, that he just hasn't. He's never released a track for bikes.
No.
and he's got some seriously good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if he wants
but he doesn't think
talking about specific tracks that he's made, but definitely a few that I would love to try. Even if I could just test him, I would love to ride him. But yeah, he's a super private dude.
Finish the track I made that garage for.
Yeah, which that's one thing that I wanted to touch on is, as far as assets for bikes go, before you, it was pretty much the Geo and Agitato packs that kind of carried MXB, but recently you have pretty much become the Mother Teresa, if you will, of MXB track making assets. I mean, every track that gets posted has red assets somewhere on there. And most of them, it's like at least half of the assets are made by you. Which
is really cool.
Yeah, yeah, whether it be the water now, I mean, every track that's been posted
Yeah.
since then pretty much has your water, which, I mean, huge help. I looked at some of the
Yeah.
tutorials on how to make water. I think uh, when I was making Tomahawk, my third release, and this was like a year and a half ago. I looked on, generic Blender tutorials on how to make good looking water, and for one, I would just get lost immediately, and two, Paboso's engine, like, just doesn't recognize so many things that, like, could make the game easier to work on, but,
Yeah.
we're limited
Well,
to the engine that we have. But yeah, ever since you posted your water, I mean, tracks are just getting transformed.
tracks are getting water now.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
we've
yeah, it's very
discovered water.
funny at because I think and it's pretty true. Like a lot of times with creation, it's often the things that take the least amount of time that end up being like the coolest things or something. Like I probably start to finish took 5 hours to do that. And like the other things, the water truck, the dump truck, the semi, taking several hours.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
And the
absolutely.
water just start to finish about 5 hours, and there's a decent water texture that has some transparency to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it seems like such a basic thing. Like if someone that's never made a track or at least tried to recreate a decent water asset for their tracks, like if someone like that looked at it, I mean, you would think that it would be fairly easy, which I mean, for you it might
Yeah.
be, but for the average dude that's not super well rounded as far as like asset building or just computers in general. I mean, it's a monstrous feat.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I because an upcoming project which may be finished at some point is going to have water on it, and so I was looking online to see if there was like any good like water textures, which really is just like the normal map.
Hmm.
But then I didn't really find anything exactly. And anything I think that I did find, I thought, well, I don't want to use this probably because it's like used by like everybody, and or it's made by somebody else. So um, it's like I want to try and make it myself. And then yeah, then I thought, well, I think a lot of people would probably make use of this too. I don't see a lot of people with the water and like the transparency stuff to it as well, which
Yeah.
makes it, just a little bit more realistic looking.
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny seeing some people's attempts at water, and if there's anyone that could make fun of people's attempts at water, it's definitely me because you've seen my attempts at making water
Yeah.
myself. Like Tomahawk, I literally did a ground texture, and the best part about that is the area where that water texture was, it's not even flat. So I'm just shape shifting, water bending for that.
Yeah.
And
Well,
yeah,
and I've even had some people asking me like how to make it like, because there was some person that didn't understand that it's just a plane. Like you don't have to make it actually be the shape of your pond or your whatever.
hmm.
Um, and I was just like, do it like this.
And yeah, when
That's
I
pretty wild.
when I did VetMX Compound, I kind of figured that out myself that it would just be a flat plane, but at that point I still hadn't discovered normal maps at all, like even for textures. So
Mm-hmm.
the idea of just making it look alive, I mean, it was completely foreign to me. So what I did is I just found like a running water texture online and just slapped that bad boy with full opacity on the plane. And
Yeah.
I mean, compared to what I did for Tomahawk, it looked miles better. But in the grand scheme of things, like if I were to compare that to yours, I mean, there's no shot. But I did the same thing that you did, is like I would look on different 3D modeling sites for water assets, and yeah, you look up water and it's either like glasses of water, or it would be like a pond that's 500,000 tries, because they've modeled every little wave.
Yeah, that, and or it's specifically meant for like animation.
Yeah, or it's like a scene, like it's got the water and the sand and grass and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then you
Yeah.
did the semis, the water truck, the Dunlop tire. I mean,
Yeah, the tire was also like maybe 5 hours.
yeah, and even that
This is
one,
wild.
it's on just about every track ever since that got made. I mean, it's such a versatile
At least anybody,
asset.
anybody that has access to that object anyway at the moment.
Yeah, of course.
Eventually, like even the ones that I just recently posted, those archways, eventually I'll just do like an archway upload or something.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I've always wondered just like what you have that no one else knows about. like what's in your assets folder that no one's ever seen? It's such a big mystery to me. I like thinking about that sometimes.
It's a good question. I'm sure there's something besides stadiums.
Yeah, that's true.
They're starting to grow.
Which, I mean, I don't know how much you want to talk on that, but
Yeah, that's fun.
you're cool with me talking about it a little bit? Not going into
yeah.
too much detail? Yeah, the stadium that you made is insane. I mean, most people haven't seen it, obviously,
Yeah.
but I
Well,
mean,
and some pictures that I've shared, but it doesn't show like everything
yeah, I mean,
or all the animations. Yeah.
yeah, everything from the animations to the like exact detail of the IRL stadium.
Right.
Like, I was looking at your picture and I could point out the seat that I sat in for this year's Tampa Supercross. Like, that's insane.
Yeah.
There's
We just
so
don't
much.
have the pirate ship yet.
Yeah. I was kind of thinking to myself, like, are you gonna do the pirate ship?
I don't know. I'm maybe.
That'd be like a whole extra project.
Yeah,
like-
I already downloaded some free pirate ships that we might use or something.
Yeah. I don't
If we
think
do.
anyone on MXB will get offended if it's not the exact one.
I know. I'm hoping they don't get offended by the other stadium.
Oh, there's multiple.
Because it's not an exact replica. We won't specify the track name, but the Fort Dodge and Spikes track.
Okay.
Have you
Yeah.
seen some of the?
Yeah, so
I just posted.
So I played the first link that that got made. I haven't played it since then, just because I've been working on some other stuff. But I'm definitely looking forward to getting back into it and downloading the most recent one and testing that out. It's so nostalgic.
That one's a little bit better. And then that's part of it. Cause like I also don't want to be like the reflex guy.
Yeah.
But But it is a pretty cool um,
Yeah, I mean,
track
you do a
from
pretty good
Reflex. So
job at not being like, oh well, back in my day, back in the glory days of Reflex.
right.
I mean, unless someone knows about you from Reflex or like something specific comes up, like you don't make it a big deal, which is super cool. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, with the track list that you do have, I mean, some may say you're like the TFC of Reflex. I mean, I don't know a whole lot about Reflex and that side of things, but I mean, you've got a massive catalog of tracks.
Yeah. Not as many as what C4 has. I think
Mm-hmm.
C4 actually he's got more, but he also did start like early on when track making for that game had started. And like another creator that was pretty big was Jamie T. He's usually like the most well known if you're kind of
I've heard of them.
around that. Yeah. And he did some things with the game that like nobody else uh knows how to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, keeping some stuff secret because it's breaking the game. Like, that stuff could be used for evil,
That
like
makes sense.
just to exploit the game and cheat. Yeah. So, um, but getting his last track, his last project into the game itself, like as a like a stock track, basically. Um, it's pretty cool. But I came like basically after he had left. Um, yeah, and just spent once I did Glen Helen, then I just kind of kept going from there as far as doing like national replicas. Um, and yeah, if you ever do you have Reflex
I
on
do.
Steam?
I do have Reflex on Steam, but it's been so long since I've played Reflex like on the Xbox, and I've played so much MXB to where I went and tried to play Reflex, and I feel completely foreign to the game. Like it feels like I've never played it.
Right. Yeah.
Which I mean, I've played hours upon hours upon hours, but you spend so long away from a game to where the mechanics
Yeah.
just they don't make sense almost.
They feel different. Yeah. I actually I'm one of the few people just because I didn't have a controller at the time, but I
Oh, no
play
way.
Reflex on keyboard.
Oh, you psycho.
Yeah, it's interesting, but yeah, me and Dark Slides also, you know, we play on keyboard, so
Do you
kind
still
of
play on
funny.
keyboard when you play it?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my
Oh yeah,
goodness.
it's just like second nature.
That's
And you
insane.
don't have to, you don't have to click through any gears or anything, so
Yeah, yeah, I guess there's
it's
way
just
less.
gas, forward, lean, brake. Yeah,
There were
it's not too crazy. It's probably more crazy to be able to play keyboard on this game or Sim.
Yeah, there's a few people I know that actually play bikes on keyboard.
Yeah,
Um,
I tried it.
yep. When I first got the game, I didn't put two and two together. I mean, it sounds so weird now. Like how could you not know this type of thing? But yeah, when I first got bikes, I didn't put two and two together that you could just connect a controller to your PC. So I thought, well, I mean, the only way is to play with keyboard. And
Right.
like I would get maybe one corner in forest and die, and then throw it into gear. And on keyboard it's either no throttle or full throttle. So I would shift into first, full throttle on the 250, and backflip. And yeah, I probably had 10 hours in the game before my friend Tristan, who got me into the game, I'm like, how do you even play this? And he's like, I forgot how we got on the topic of it, but he's like, well, what buttons do you have set for this? And I'm like, oh, WASD or whatever it is. And he's like, wait, whoa,
Right.
whoa, whoa, what are you talking about?
Keyboard?
And yeah, that totally blew my mind. Like, oh, that's what the Bluetooth is for. So
Yeah.
how much does track making on reflex differ from bikes?
Um, why? Hmm. To think about how to actually, I guess, answer it doesn't differ in the way you make a height map. For the most part, you're just not making it the power of 2 plus 1 for like
Mm-hmm.
the height map. It's just everything is, power of 2. So predominantly, unless you're doing like a supercross, it's just a 2K height map.
Uh-huh.
And then texturing is if you, I'll try to analogize it to bikes. Um, you have a RGB map and you just have red, blue, green, and then you can also use black, which is to denote where the rider rides on the track and or where it deforms. That's the texture that will show up, but you can also use it as a texture too. So you technically can get 4 textures, and then from there, you can get variations with like tinting, the chrominance map, but it would be like just having one map where you had, let's say you got 3 textures, you just have your 3 masks all together as if they were able to be, separated in an alpha. Except in this case, it's the actual RGB channels. The alpha for um, reflex is the like how the textures look wet or dry, basically.
Okay.
Um, and then there's a separate map that kind of does some lighting stuff, which is the chrominance map. And in the RGB channels of that, you can tint it. I don't know if you remember, there was a supercross track where it does go outside, and as you're coming back in, there's like this red glass, and then the track has this red tint on it when it makes it look like the glass is shining that color, and it's not. It's just that particular tint that's happening in the chrominance map.
Was this a stock track or a user made?
Mm-hmm. Stock. Yeah, stock tracks.
Huh. Because the only ones that I remember going outside of the stadium were I think Fort Dodge round one and oh no, there were the DLC ones. Is that what you're talking
Maybe
about?
that's maybe they were DLC.
There was like one
Um,
DLC that was like under a bunch of bridges, and then it goes into like a warehouse, I think.
Not Boxcar. No. I can't remember what the name of this one is. Because it also has a metal ramp as like one of the doubles.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. I know exactly what you're
Because
talking
there's this
about.
huge like double, triple, quad thing outside. Yeah, I can't remember which one it is. Maybe it's Kingston.
Yeah, the one you're
Um,
talking about, you go when you're leaving the stadium, you go through this tunnel, and then you take a
yeah,
left, and there's a rhythm section, and then 90 right,
yeah,
like
whoops,
on off.
and
Yeah, and
yeah,
then
yep,
whoops coming back into the stadium.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I know which one you're talking
they
about.
kind of color some of the dirt that way too. So you know, technically 4 textures, and then you can tint them different colors to yeah to make it look a little bit more varied, even more. But yeah, splines are the racing, um, and I think it's called an activity, but I think that those are way more simplified than what it takes to make a center line for MX bikes,
Yeah.
and then all the other stuff. In there's pros and cons because you can manually select the inside and out for cuts, and for reflex, a lot of times you have to manually adjust the nodes. So that's not super fun having to do.
Hmm.
But yeah. At least with MXB, you have the possibility of making your own start gate, whereas we just had no possibility of making our own. The only person that was able to do that was Jamie T. And again, because for some reason, somehow, he knew how to like um, open whatever file it was and then repackage it the way that Reflex reads it. So, but he didn't even share that information with Dark Slides.
Yeah.
So,
It's a trade secret. But yeah, I could
yeah.
see how making, what we know as a center line, I can imagine how it could be a little bit easier on Reflex cuz I mean, like you said, like there's no checkpoints or gates that you would have to make. It's pretty much just on track, off track.
Yeah, for the most part. When you connect it, there are a few things that maybe you could get tripped up on when you finally connect uh, the spline together. But for the most part, you just have your start, your whole shot, and your finish, um, and that's pretty much it. And then you can do other fancier stuff with each node, where like say you didn't want somebody to reset in a certain spot, you can check that you don't reset there. I think that's mostly helpful for like bridges, like SX
Yeah.
under over, because you could crash and then get reset under the bridge, in which case then you have to crash again to get the next reset. And that's just bad.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds like a hoot.
Yeah. Probably the hardest thing to do for reflex is that prominence map. Just kind of learning what that is and like how to do it. That would be the equivalent of our like highlight mask.
Oh yeah,
Um, yeah, so doing all of that stuff. That's pretty much what it is.
that makes sense. So is there like a program that you would use, like a mainframe, if you will, almost like the
Compiler.
Reso builder?
Yeah, this one is actually a dedicated like track compiler, because um, unless you have Jamie's export script from 3ds Max, you are placing objects manually in Digital Earthworks, which can be a pain. There's stuff to make it so you can be precise, but it's still a pain. Um,
I could imagine.
if you look at my YouTube, there's a video called like Reflex Track Creators Are Crazy, and like it was when I was making Bud's Creek and then placing all the banners and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. It sounds like a very fun time making reflex tracks. I mean, definitely coming from MX bikes. At least the texturing portion, that sounds like complete gibberish Chinese to me. And
Yeah.
I'm sure to someone that, doesn't even build tracks at all or do anything that has to do with, Photoshop. I mean, I'm sure what you said for texturing
It
just
probably
went one
makes
in
sense.
one ear and one out the other. But yeah, that kind of sounds like a nightmare, but everything else seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah, for the most part. This game uses normal maps, and that game uses what are called bump maps, and they handle things a little bit differently. Um, I wish MXB had like what would now be called like a height map or a displacement map for
Hmm.
our textures, which is essentially a height map for your textures. And that makes it so that like your textures will also blend better, like rock into dirt would blend versus looking like it is, starting to blur or erase away.
Yeah.
Um, because even I think I saw something from like Ruben explaining like, you know, how it would be cool, but yeah, we
Yeah.
are never gonna have that. But that's okay. It still make things look nice with the normal map um, track overlay thing,
Yeah. Yeah. The one.
which
Sorry. Go
which
ahead.
can be hard to figure out, as you know,
Oh yeah.
when you get too many textures.
I mean, I didn't have a normal map on my textures until KI tracks, which was, I forget, it was my like sixth or seventh, eighth release or something.
Oh,
I mean, that normals are kind of something like, unless someone tells you about them, like unless someone's like, "Hey, your track looks like garbage. You should probably add some normals."
it
Like,
just looks like a little bit like Play-Doh.
yeah. Yeah, I remember right when I first joined Earthworks, I was working on Vetamex Compound, and
Yeah.
one of the first things I asked was I had posted a picture of the start straight on the main track, and I was like, hey, does anyone know how to make this look less like carpet? Because you could just see every texture repeating, and of course at that point I had no idea what I was doing still with textures. And I think textures are one of the most important parts of making a good looking track. I mean, obviously. But like
Yeah.
you could have the flowiest, most fun height map, like a great center line, like that doesn't have stupid cuts, every lap counts. You know, cameras are done, marshals are done, great looking assets, but if your textures are off, it completely ruins everything.
Yeah, environment wise, it distracts away. Yeah. Doesn't enhance what you have, it just distracts.
Yeah, yeah, especially when you can't see like braking bumps or ruts, which I know I've had my fair share of, but you know, we've moved past that. We've gotten
Yeah,
better.
it's just part of the process.
Yeah.
Um,
Some people learn it slower. I've probably learned it the slowest. It makes me
yeah.
jealous looking at some of these other track creators that, you know, post their very first ever track and they're like, hey, it might not be that good, but hope you guys like it. And, like, I'll look at it and I'm like, this looks like my tracks now. 2 years in and 11 tracks done. Like, this looks like what I'm making right now. Like, stop being hard on yourself.
That's pretty cool though. I didn't know you had 11.
Between the tracks that I've released and the tracks that I've, you know, made good progress on, I think it's like 11. But I think releases, I'm at 9.
Oh, okay.
I've got two. Well, one is just a free ride area. I think it was like a week or two after I retired after KI tracks, and I wanted to do just a ski jump, like an actual like ski lift, and
Yeah.
you would go down this massive hill and hit the biggest booters that I could possibly dream of. So I'm like, you know what? No one will ever see this. And, you know, I tried to make the biggest jumps I could with Sky's the Limit. And people seem to like it. But it's very unrealistic. And you definitely get a lot of Pabobo wonk off of it. So if there's no one to complain about it, I'm gonna make it for myself so I could hit fifth gear tap jumps on the 144 horsepower, mod bikes.
Yeah.
And that kind of didn't go anywhere. And then the other one that I never, or the other one that I kind of gave up, it was as much of a hybrid motocross and supercross track that you could think of. So I would have it's a full length outdoor track and a full length supercross track on the same track.
Mm-hmm.
So you would go around the full outdoor loop, and it would bring you right into the start of the supercross portion. And the idea of it, I think, is great. However, it was like a 4.5 minute lap time, and I'm like, well,
in practice, it becomes an endurance race.
Yeah, it really wasn't fun either. So I'm like, this is such a big project. Do I really want to, devote this much time to something that's, not going to be worth anything in the end? So,
yeah, you have to decide when you're making something, like, probably, I don't know, I guess, like, still making the height map if it's, like, not fun or it's just not coming together, like, yeah.
Yeah, like, why
stop working on it, take a break, or just completely scrap it.
Yeah, like the one that I'm working on right now, I don't know if you've seen any pictures of it. It's not very polished at the moment, but the height map is pretty much done. But it's going to be like a desert-style outdoor track. And, if you're going to do a desert track, like, it's obviously going to be sand. And so I created the height map and threw a sand material on. And the track was totally boring. I tried altering the height map to make it more fun, and there was really nothing that I could do to make it work. It was too wide open. There was not enough, or, well, I should say there's too much space to really make a proper sand track. Like, with sand, you would want it a little bit tighter, a little bit smaller. Because I think for sand, the best part about that is, the roughness, the braking bumps, the rollers. So if I tried doing that for this track that I'm working on, it'd probably also end up being like a 3.5-4 minute lap time. So I was like so close to just scrapping it and calling it a day, calling it a loss. And I'm like, you know what? What if I did just put soft soil on? So I put a thin layer of soft soil on the top and left the rest sand underneath. And I can't stop playing it. Like I like to think that I'm working on it, but in reality I'm just playing, not working on the track at all.
Yeah.
And it's like you do one little thing and it completely transforms how the track's coming along.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably one thing in terms of productivity, not getting trapped in playing the track as much, like once you've gotten things the way you want them, and then just grinding and not actually doing anything else, as I'm doing right now. Yeah, that's one of the things you try to limit happening, I guess. Track making.
Yeah, that's probably why it takes me so long to make a track. And it also kind of ruins the track for you when you actually do release it, because you've been grinding out this track for so long now, like whether it be a month or like 6 months, depending on how big the track is. Like, you've just put so many hours, so many laps into the track, and you release it and you're like, all right, I can't wait to ride with, you know, people from the community, like public lobbies. Like, this is going to be sick, seeing how people react to the track, seeing what kind of lines people find. And you go into a couple servers, and you're like, you know what? I'm sick of this track.
Yeah, I think probably for track makers, it's probably um, riding with like other track makers or like close friends before the track drops or you know, something like that. That's probably like gonna be your most fun. Like with Redwick, that you know, making the video and doing the stuff and
Oh,
you
that
know,
was
sharing
so
with you
much fun.
guys. Like that's you know, the end or like what I'm looking for after like completing a project is just that.
Yeah.
Because you're pretty much tired of the track, and it's just like being in a band and playing the same song over and over until you have it down. Like you're tired of hearing the song, but
Mm-hmm.
you do because that way you can play it without thinking about it. And so it's very similar in that regard, where it's very much boring, but the fun part, so like playing in a band, would be the show part, like being on stage and you know, having fun that way because you've already did all the other work.
Wow, that's a really
Yeah.
good analogy, actually.
Yeah. Yep.
I never even thought of it like that. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely the coolest part is, I mean, even if I am super burnt out on a track, like Elevator, the one I just released, I mean, I can't put another lap into that track. Like, I'm sick of it. Like, I've you know, ridden every line 1,000 times, making sure everything works as it should. And I don't care to probably ever load it up again. But I love
Right.
seeing what kind of lines people come up with. Like, even if they are lines that I've done a million times, I love seeing people find them for the first time. Um, like, I don't know. Have you played Elevator?
Yeah.
So you know, after the whoop section, it goes down into that right hander, and it comes back up into that rhythm section.
Yeah.
So when I did the reveal lap video, I specifically rolled up the hill and then doubled in when there's that first face. When I knew very well that the fast line would be just doubling up from that like ravine onto the
Yeah.
face of the first jump. Like, I would take that line as many times as I could unless I completely botched a corner, but I specifically wanted to roll up the hill for that lap video just so people would, you know, be able to find that line themselves. Because if I come out on the video and hit every big line, that really leaves no, you know, room for, you know, exploring for someone who's just trying the track out.
Like saying like, uh, this is the main line, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that would make it pretty boring. Like if I showed the big lines and then people find their own new lines and it's really just doubling through, like, what's the fun in that?
Yeah. I as for like Redwick, I instead of that's why I made like the video mostly. Like I still like it's hard to not crash on that track. And so I would be trying to record like a first you know, person view of a lap, and like every single time somewhere on the track I would crash. So, you know, you guys doing those lap previews for the shop, like, man.
Well,
Or like
dude,
somebody else is gonna have to ride this for me and take a video.
well, dude, it was like the same thing. So on that same topic of that video that I took, it was just one lap on Elevator for the shop preview. Um, so when I would just ride around on my own, like, you know, during the track building process, like, I'd put down 10 laps. They'd all be heaters. And, I wouldn't crash once. I've got the track completely dialed. And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'm ready to record a lap so I could throw it on YouTube, throw the link on the shop. Like, let's do it. Nice. I pressed record, got down the first hill, and just wadded. I'm like, okay, this one's scrapped. Let me start a new recording. And
Something
I did
happened.
I did that probably 20 times. I'd say at least 20 times.
Okay. Yeah, something happens when you press record. I don't
It's
know
all
what
the
it is.
time. And it's like not as bad when you're streaming, which is weird. Like anytime that, I mean, I don't really stream anymore, but when I would stream, like I'd be able to put down heaters like pretty consistently on whatever track I was playing. It's just recording. It's something about it. Like the pressure that's non-existent that you just put on yourself. You just cannot put down a lap.
Yeah. Yeah, manifests
Yeah.
into crashing. Yeah.
Yeah, and like with Redwick too, specifically, I mean, that track is definitely a hard track. That is a very difficult track, but it's not hard enough to where it's not fun to ride, but it's just hard enough to where it's a blast to ride. And when you do make a good lap or like hit a section perfect, it's so satisfying.
Yeah.
And enough big lines to keep it interesting.
Yeah. The original goal, because like I also made it for Reflex and then changed a bunch of things to work with MXB, but the original idea was to make it kind of for all skill levels in a way. But it doesn't translate exactly for MX bikes as far as being like beginner friendly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was a little bit of a bummer because I myself, I can't, complete a lap without crashing most times. So,
Yeah, but I mean, I don't really think that's that big of a problem though. Like, sure, tracks like Forest and Club, places to where you could just keep it pinned and turn your brain off, those tend to be the most popular, at least as far as, servers go. But, I mean, who really cares about that? Like, it'd be nice to have servers popping off until the end of time, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I think the Forest and Club and etc., I think those have really put a stain on the the online community as far
maybe
as bikes go.
that aspect, yeah.
Yeah, but I know so many people that have been around for a while definitely value the difficulty in tracks like that. Like, I mean, if people didn't value the difficulty of riding certain places on bikes, I mean, places like Krakenberg would never succeed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I definitely don't choose to ride that track because it's so hard.
So I've completed 2 full laps at Krakenberg. The first one, it was the first time like I actually sat down and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do a full lap. But the problem was I took a standard motocross bike, I think probably a CRF 450 from like beta 16. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to do a full lap. It's going to be fun. I've set aside a couple hours to where I could just play and, enjoy it. And I got to, I mean, I wouldn't know how to describe. If I wanted to try to describe where this thing happened, I'd probably say like the area with rocks or the part of the quarry. But, if I was able to finish it naturally, I would probably have another 2 minutes to go. But what had happened is I ran out of gas. I completely forgot to put a bunch of gas in the bike. So I just left the bike stock, and with like 2 minutes of actual riding to go, like fifth gear pinned type of riding to go, I ran out of gas, and I'm like, well, I've got about 2 hours and 20 minutes into this lap. I'm not gonna let this, I'm not gonna let the track win. So I spent probably half an hour walking the bike to the finish line.
That's crazy.
And the best part was I got to the finish line after walking it the rest of the way, and it didn't count the lap. So
I wonder why it didn't.
So I didn't have Max HUD at the time. I hadn't discovered it yet. So, I mean, there was probably a ton of different gates that I just completely missed.
Oh,
Because
okay,
I mean,
yeah.
you get to some spots in Krakenberg and you're like, I have no idea where I am, and you just search for a sign and you're like, okay, this looks correct. But yeah, and then probably 6 months later, I had Max HUD, so I could see the map, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna fill up the full tank, as much gas as I could throw in her. And yeah, I think like an hour and 45 minutes, I actually completed a lap for the first time, and the last time as of right now.
Yeah, it's so long.
But it's so satisfying when you do the lap. Like you get to that section to where there's like the Red Bull arches and stuff, and you hear the music and the people cheering, and even though they're completely just stock sounds, like you're like, oh yeah, like I've achieved something.
Yeah, it's pretty cool that he put that in.
It'd be so neat to see like a massive like mega project like that today. Like what new things have, been done in track building that could be implemented into something like that to just escalate the quality of track over what Krakenberg already is.
Yeah.
Like maybe animations of some sorts, but at the same time, it's such a
That's
huge
probably
map.
about it. Probably, I would say. Those animations.
Because Krakenberg is what, like 1.2, 1.5 gigabytes? I mean, it's got to have at least a 4K height map, maybe even 8K.
Trying to remember. I think it's 4K. I think. And he did have some animated textures for finding the backpack asset.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's
you
right.
could find, but yeah, he said you'd have to wait and stare at something. I forget what it was, but you'd have to wait for however long, and then it would pop up.
Oh, you know what? No, it wasn't animated, because I ended up getting it. It was a sound. So, I mean, I feel like we're probably enough time into the release of Krakenberg to where I could probably speak on it freely and it not be a huge top secret thing. But I just went in free roam and searched the entire track and was able to find all the things to get the URL, I think it was, to get the backpack. But they were like these like posts, I don't know, I forget exactly what they are, but they would have a sound coming out of them where it would tell you like a code like 2791. It was so confusing though. Like even with free roam and finding them all super easily, like just like writing down the numbers and trying to figure out what they mean, like it's Black Ops. I mean, what he did was so cool at that place.
Yeah. I was tr- I was also thinking um, we so like I got my start in reflex and then switched to bikes. Redwick was like my introduction to learning how to make tracks for the game, basically.
Hmm.
So I spent, I don't know, 4 months just learning how to play the game because you can't make tracks unless you can play the game.
Yeah,
So,
true.
uh, and so like even now, while I'm definitely way better than was starting out, there's still some things that I don't know if because I can't do them, like the way I make it is either it's like a skill issue or it just doesn't work with the game.
Yeah.
And so it can be hard to kind of figure those out. But the reason that, I'm doing more like assets and objects is mostly because like to some degree, after some years, making tracks, it gets to be too repetitive, like the same thing.
Yeah.
Um, the AMA, now GP series stuff is, somebody else is working on those things. Like they don't, we don't need another creator making replica nationals.
Yeah, if
So
we have one more red bud in the game.
yeah. um, and so yeah, uh, making objects is kind of like the new thing that uh, found more interest in. Which isn't to say that because like the track that I'm working on now, um, you know, every once in a while you get that itch to make a track again. But yeah, uh, it it's a lot to make the track, but then also learning how to make your own custom like 3D objects that are very specific to whatever track most of the time. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and it's got to be fulfilling to at least some degree. Something that, building a track couldn't really achieve to basically download a track that, you didn't know that was in progress, like someone outside of Earthworks, for example, and you download it and you see your signature right there, like something that you created, someone else found use in, and then, you know, seeing your name in the credits on the post. I mean, I've seen, maybe 4 or 5 with my name in the credits, either for, the assets that I've created that, really aren't good, but they're there, or the tutorial. Like, I know for
yeah,
me that, like, just seeing my name there, it's like so cool to me. So, I mean, I'm sure for someone who makes plenty of assets and very good quality assets at that, I mean, it's pretty much every track that gets posted. Like, there it is. Thanks, Red, for assets. And I mean, I was gonna before this podcast, I was gonna go through all the tracks that I have and count all the thumbnails that have your logo on it that don't include Redwick. And like, I was thinking more about it. I'm like, you know what? There's so many shop tracks that I don't have, and there's so many like newer, like even MXP mods tracks that I don't have that I know have your logo. You can't download every track. I mean, especially shop tracks, or you'll go
yeah.
broke with how many there are at this
True.
point. But I mean, there are so many tracks that you've contributed enough to where it warrants having your logo on them. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like with Maplar and King MX, uh, kind of like working with them on like whatever it is that they kind of need, or and then they're also like learning too now as well,
Hmm.
like for making their own stuff as well. And but every once in a while, there might be something that is above their experience, and then I'm able to help out, and then I in a way, you're getting to contribute to the project overall, and so it feels nice to add something to a project where I don't have to complete the project,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you don't get to do the boring parts,
yeah.
you just get to do the cool parts.
Yeah.
And then reap the benefits of that.
That's what happened with uh did you see the Mordor
Yeah.
Moto Park?
Yeah, that place is
Yeah.
sick.
Like the first time I think we've had like, all of the smoke, the particles, the fire, the animated clouds, like just so many animations. Oh,
Yeah.
animated lava.
Yeah, that track is, I mean, if there was a score for being unique, I mean,
Yeah.
you wouldn't be able to put that track on the scoreboard. I mean, it would break the scoreboard.
And like the way, and King does like pretty like flowy height maps. So that's a benefit. But I had ideas, like we all do. We have different ideas about different fantasy tracks to make and this and that. And I had an idea to do like a kind of a lava type track as well. But with everything going on, it was just easier to, you know, basically do what I would do object wise to help with his project because I don't have the time to do
Yeah.
a full blown project myself. Like, yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, it seems like everyone pretty much was able to appreciate the unique factor and like just how cool and different that track was. I mean, there's plenty of YouTube videos out there of people just frothing over the fact that like this track is on lava. Like what?
yeah. But funny, if I would have did the track, I just would have named the track "The Floor Is Lava," just like a super cheesy joke.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I probably would have done the same thing. Like I try so hard to think of good track names, like unless it's a replica,
Yeah,
and then what ends up happening is names like Elevator SX.
right.
Like how good is that? You have a supercross track with a low section and a high section. What should we call it? Elevator.
Yeah. Well, because we also have like I'm sure other tracks, they have different section or jump names, and so you can see a jump being called the elevator, and yeah, I think that pretty much gives a good idea of what an elevator SX would be.
Yeah. Yeah, which that was another thing that I thought was sick about Redwick is each jump was named.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've never seen that being done. Maybe in one other track, I can't think of what it was, but yeah, I mean, this one other track that I can't think of the name right now, it was pretty much one jump that was named.
Right.
But then most, if not all, the jumps on Redwick, it was, named after someone or something. Like, that was sick.
Yeah. Thanks. It's like it's not super original because like it happens IRL, but maybe original in the sense that we don't usually see it in the game or in these games, I guess.
Yeah.
Because even now, like the one project me and Logan are working on, like we one of the jumps is called Quadzilla.
Ooh, that sounds right up my alley.
Yeah, it is a 450 jump.
Yeah, and I think one of the hardest things about creating jumps, for me at least, is finding something that would be fun for both 250s and 450s.
Yeah.
And something like a quad makes it a little bit easier because you could have the triple single or double double for the 250s. Um, and then, yeah, if you've got a 450, yeah, just huck the whole thing. You'll be good.
Yeah.
Hold it wide open.
I haven't hit it on the factory bikes to know for sure, but I mean, if they're like pretty close to what they can do like in third gear, um, as far as like speed that the 450 OEMs are,
Yeah.
um, I bet it might be doable. Which is another thing that you don't want to do is build your track on the factory bikes.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, I mean, in my opinion, I would say the factory 250, you could, you could definitely put it head to head to an OEM 350, and I'd say they'd be pretty much even. And the
Yeah.
450, the 450 from the factory bikes is a lot harder, for me to just handle. Like, I'll ride an OEM 450 all day, and I'll be fine. But the factory 450, for some reason, it's just so much of a handful. But I also don't really play with settings all that much. Like, every bike I
Yeah.
ride, I just leave suspension stock. I might change the tires, but yeah, I'd say it's probably just as fast. It's just harder for me to handle.
Yeah, I've only ridden the 250
But I definitely
factory
have
bikes.
had the issue of creating a track on one specific bike, and then once it's completely done, ready to post, I'm like, wait, I wonder if this will work with other bikes.
Yeah.
Like, Sky's the Limit was definitely a prime example of that. Like, I was on the CRF 450, and yeah, I just rode that bike through the entire process of building that track, and I'm like, okay, this is dialed. And I went and rode it on a 250. I'm like, well, there's two jumps that are, one's a double and one's a tabletop, and you cannot come close to clearing them. Like, what do I do now?
Yeah. Yeah, that's it's definitely something to consider.
But it's definitely better to have a track more for 250s than it would be for 450s, because at least with a 450 you could just scrub. But then if it's a 450 track and you're on a 250, you're just kind of screwed.
Yeah. I usually start out 250, and then from there I might try and see like um how much do I over jump something on a 450 basically. And then
Yeah.
maybe I adjust that and then see if I can still do just fine on the 250. And maybe it's just a little bit of a stretch, but it's still doable. And then, you find that kind of that somewhat of a sweet spot where it's not an OJ necessarily on the
Yeah.
450 and it's not a case on the 250.
Yeah, it's pretty much just about finding that balance. Like, if it works for all bikes, I mean, you've got that part dialed, and yeah, if you could do that, you'll pretty much succeed as far as height maps go.
Yeah.
I've
Height maps
definitely.
are
What's that?
said height maps in general are just like it's a whole other skill set.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun. It's funny because, like, you could be good at height maps and god awful at texturing, and you could be good at both of those and not have a clue what you're doing with assets. It's definitely hard to master all of them simultaneously. Like, for first time track builders, like, I'm proud of anyone who is able to start from nothing, like, no previous experience with modding any game, and going straight into building their first track. Like, I think that's so cool when someone is able to just go from nothing to having a full release. Like, even if it's complete poo-poo. Like, if it is Play-Doh textures and, you know, it's all Geo assets all the way around, which nothing against Geo's assets. I mean, he's a legend for, you know, blessing us with the assets that he did, and pretty much every MXP track in existence has them. But, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, having a super basic starter track, like, I still think it's so cool when someone's able to go from nothing to releasing anything that works. Because it's definitely a huge feat.
Yeah. Getting your center line to work properly.
And that's why I posted the tutorial that I did, the just like starting from nothing tutorial for building a track. Like when I've built my first track, like the TFC series was out. I think when I tried to build my first ever track that never ended up getting done, that was like a month or two before Rezo's builder tool even came out. So of course that tutorial series didn't exist, and like I was trying to follow TFC's series, and like I got to a point to where like the track didn't want to build, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong, and I'm like, I just want to know how to start with a blank height map, like just flat plane, and just go from there. I just want to build jumps and play it. That's all I want to do, but I can't figure that part out. Like, even as simple as that is for someone who knows what they're doing, like, I mean, that would take 2 seconds. And in the tutorial, it does take me 2 seconds to do what I wish I knew way back then. But I think it's definitely beneficial for someone who, like, that's all they want to do is start with nothing, like, not go the whole tangram route. Like, they're not trying to make a replica. They just want to have a flat area and throw some jumps in there and figure it out from there. Like, at least have a starting point. Like, that's why I wanted to make that tutorial, which I definitely screwed up on the tutorial. One major thing.
You'll have that.
So, you know, have you ever used L3DT?
One time, and it's been forever.
So I'll kind of briefly explain like what I messed up on that. So when you're importing a height map into L3DT, there's one section that you have to fill out. It's the maximum height for the height map. So really just the scale, the elevation. And then in L3DT, that same menu, there's minimum and maximum for the scale. But for MXB, you don't need the minimum. You just need to throw in the maximum, because the minimum's just going to be 0 no matter what. And so when I was shown how to do that portion, I ended up putting the scale in the minimum box instead of the maximum box. And it was my second time recording that tutorial anyway, because the first time I did it, I forget what went wrong. I think either the file got corrupted or I wasn't recording sound or something crazy to where I couldn't use it at all. So I was already, 45 minutes in. And I'm like, you know what? I just want to get this done. So when I got that height map in game, I didn't have any elevation like from the jumps that I made in L3. So I'm like, I don't want to figure this out, and I don't want to redo it. So I'm like, all right, I'll just post it. And then comments started flooding in like, hey, I made my track, but I don't see jumps. Like, what am I doing wrong? And like, I have to go through each and every comment and respond to them and be like, hey, like, I messed up. Don't use the minimum scale, use the maximum. I'm sorry.
Oh man, yeah, yeah.
Which it's always
I
just
mean, even
one little thing like that.
yeah. I mean, even if you do everything correctly, you're still going to get questions about something that you cover
Oh yeah.
in there anyway. But yeah.
Yeah, and you'll always get the forbidden question, the can you make my local track? I'll pay you $25.
You're like, yeah, keep your 25.
One of my favorite pastimes is going on the Facebook group. Are you part of that? The Facebook
Mm-mm.
MX Bikes group?
Nope.
Oh, lucky you.
Yeah, I don't get to see that.
You're not missing much. It's there's like three things that are on the MXP Facebook group. It's either what's your guys' fastest forest lap time, or I'm getting bike mismatch. Please help with no other extra information.
Right.
And then the last thing is, hey, someone should make this track. It's my local track and it would work great in the game. So whenever I see a post like that, I always either copy the link from like either my tutorial or TFC's or Rezo's tutorial, and I'll just throw that in the comments, and that seems to create a hoot anytime I ever do that. But I mean, you can't just be asking for people to spend 90 to 200 hours of their time just so you can have your own track that probably won't be that good. But you know, if you want it so bad, you can make it. But everyone always has the same exact excuse that everyone else does. Oh, I just don't have the time. Like, I've got other stuff going on. Well, so do we.
Yeah. It's a lot. I think probably even more so for MXB. There's a little bit more. So I was just thinking, I forget what it was that triggered the thought, but it was the like just getting your track in game to ride it. Like you've got to have a working like race line, a working center line, right?
Yeah.
Well, for like Reflex, you don't. You just have free ride. Like until you make it raceable, there's no raceable version. It's just free ride. And so figuring out how to get that to how work was a little bit challenging, and like I couldn't even get like someone to like really help me or like to figure it out. And then for whatever reason, like I think the way Rezo configured the track builder, it just automatically works with the new project. So I was like, son of a like this is dumb. I'm not even trying to race. Like why can't I just test it out in game? It still makes sense.
Well,
But
what I
that's the
usually
way
do whenever I'm starting a new project is I'll just take either the center line from my last track build or like the stock test track center line. I'll just throw that on the project in the meantime, and like, sure, it won't be the same track path, but at least you'll be able to get in without seeing pit lane full.
Yeah. Well, the way he made it now is that it automatically adds that example track map
Oh, for
center
real?
line for you. Yep.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep. So now you don't have to do like any manual thing.
See, you learn something new every day.
Yeah. Just like when he did the raw converter from the PNGs. So
Oh,
you
yeah.
just do a PNG, you don't have to actually make the raw file anymore.
Which I still do the raw file because, you know, peanut brain. And it's funny because all like sometimes if I get to like a good stopping point, I'll export both raw and PNG so I could throw the PNG into GIMP to do texture masking. But yeah, I mean, extra steps. So yeah, as far as the future goes, what can we see from Red in the future as far as releases go? Anything in the pipeline?
Immediate future, probably the Supercross series, as we talked about, like the stadium that I made with Logan and DeBlue, making height maps, Jesse doing all the track ad stuff.
Jesse's thing.
And then, yeah, pretty much. And then the super secret, the reflex one that I'm working on.
Oh yeah.
That'll be the next one from, at least under my name anyway.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what it's going to be under. I'm assuming it's just going to be Earthworks for the Supercross collaboration stuff. And then me and Logan have a track that we started on in like October. It was either October or November of last year.
I think you had sent me, either you or Logan had sent me a couple screenshots of it when either you or him were trying to explain norms to me, and I just wasn't getting it.
Yeah, only to find out is because it was buried underneath one of the.
Oh, not even that.
Mass.
No, it was an even stupider reason than that. I just didn't I didn't have shaders on in game.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, so right now I have 2,048.2 hours in bikes, and at that time I probably had 1,800-ish hours, and I got to that point without realizing that you needed shaders on to see norms. Slow learner.
Well, I'm glad we figured it out, though.
I'm so glad. Just trying to make a track look decent without norms is painstakingly difficult.
It turns out it's really hard. One might say impossible.
So we got
our big project. It's a huge map. It will have like pretty much everything. Trails. It's probably going to have 2 national tracks, but like a short version. Like they're the same track, but like, you know, the Forest has like short, or it will probably have a short version and then just like a long version. Supercross, an enduro cross.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, trying to make won't give out all the details for the recording here, but
absolutely.
Definitely stuff that makes it very unique. Yeah.
Wow.
At least stuff that I haven't seen done. So
I am getting so excited just you talking about it right now. I can only hope and pray that I'll be part of the beta testing team.
I was just thinking we could probably send you what I'm writing right now. Because even
really?
Cody's gotten to write it a little bit.
And then I could just sneak throw that PKC onto MXB mods and then flee the country. Just say I built it and just dip. No one ever hears from me again.
Logan to say Do you know who did this?
Oh, I have no idea.
I think I know.
And just never post this podcast or just cut this portion out. But no, I'd be totally stoked to do that. That would be so sweet.
I'm wondering, yeah, maybe if we got a little bit of time, we could just do like a, I don't know, like a little server ride on it or something.
Yeah, I'd be totally down.
All right. Good.
All right. Well, that works. Anything else you want to add?
Nothing that I can think of.
Okay, cool.
Ma-
Well,
Make cool stuff.
that's the name of the game. That's what we all strive to do, for sure. All right. Well, it's been a blast. This is a really good podcast, and I feel like it flowed pretty well. There was never
Yeah.
nothing to talk about, which is nice. It's what you could always hope for.
Right, yeah. No dead space.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and definitely super excited to see what's next to come in the adventures of Red.
Yeah, thanks, man.
All right. We will end it there.